Yep, I'm sharing my PowerPoint. Okay. Hi, my name is Ichika, and I'm a third year cancer biomedicine student at UCL, and I'm also the president of the UCL Genetics Society this year. So, yeah, as you may realize from my title slide, I was not in London over the summer, but in a city called Norwich, which is around 1 hour and 50 minutes away from UCL. Um, Apparently, some of my friends have asked me if I have done a farming internship or whether I want to be a vet by looking at these photos. But actually, my research project was about investigating the interaction between bacteria and immune cells. So I would like to start by briefly talking about my background. I am an international student who was almost entirely educated in Japanese with no previous lab experience in the UK. However, I was enrolled in this course called the medical science course of my high school, which puts strength in science education. So I was studying a little bit about Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and I was also familiar with the basic research skills. I have also done several lab visits and 1 to 3 days internships, but that was basically it. I originally had the motivation to pursue a PhD and had been wondering if I could gain some exposure to research from earliest possible time. And the fact that I had never done anything in English brought me to apply for the scholarship schemes in the UK rather than going back to my country to find one. As you may realize, because I am already studying cancer biomedicine, I have solid interest in cancer biology, but that was also the thing that I started to get confused of like which exact topic within cancer biology I am interested in, and that is also the core reason why I decided to apply for scholarships. While I did not have a lot of practical experience to put on my CV, I had been involved heavily in extracurricular activities where I was a committee for two societies, genetics as well as Cancer Charity Design Society, and a project leader for student-led volunteering project, and also a student rep for my course cohort. I did not do this purely for my CV, but this was one of the best ways to network with others outside of my small department who are on the same page for applying internships, and also to bond with potential referees from my department for upon applying for my summer internship applications. So, unlike other people, I have applied to a bunch of studentship schemes and scholarship schemes. I started my preparation in October last year, year two, October. And in total, I have applied to more than 10 different scholarship schemes. And the blue colored ones are the one that I failed. And green was I got interviewed, but then I failed. And the red ones are the ones that I actually succeeded. I am pretty sure the recruitment for these schemes will open anytime soon. So I would suggest everyone to take note of these for your future reference. So now, talking about my research project, I was based in an institute called Quadram Institute, associated with the University of East Anglia. And this institute studies about gut health, microbiology, as well as food science. And you will be seeing the list of projects offered through this scholarship scheme. And having seen this project proposal, I knew that my ex-supervisor, Dimitra, has found out that an anaerobic bacteria, Fusobacterium nucleatum, interacts with immune cells through this transmembrane protein called Siglec7 with high binding affinity. And this interaction actually promotes colorectal cancer progression through the generation of pro-inflammatory environment. So I decided to extend on this topic, and I have measured the cytokine levels as well as investigated the downstream signaling pathways on immune cells, which specifically was a human monocytic cell line called U937 cells. Initially, this project was very, very different from how it was proposed in the project list. But I met my supervisor and we had several issues regarding my vaccination status and so on, and discussed like what sort of things I am actually interested in, what is my goal, etc. And she was very kind enough to build up a modified version of the project together. And I've listed up the techniques that I've learned from her, which I believe have equipped me enough for my postgrad application. Also, especially the fact that she was a flow cytometry facility manager, helped me a lot in understanding some of the concepts behind both conventional as well as spectral flow cytometry. If you'd like to know more about the project, drop me an email and I'll hopefully be able to answer. To culminate this project, I was told to make this poster, and I also wrote an A4 one-page abstract and a PowerPoint, and attended an internal conference at University of East Anglia with other scholars. So what the QIB experience has led to. So I was fortunate enough to find another summer placement right after my Norwich experience at UCL Cancer Institute, where I belong to. But how I got this position is basically, I believe that this, by doing a research through this scholarship scheme has helped me a lot, because I have approached to my current PI saying that I have summer experience in Norwich, which at QIB, which was Gut Health Research Institute, and I want to study more about gut organoid, which is their one of their work back at UCL alongside my studies. And then I got interviewed, and then I got the position, and I came back London from Norwich. These are the pictures of my lovely organoids. Yeah, so and finally, I would like to finish by having some take-home messages. So if you have only little experience in labs, you really don't have the choice but to apply for multiple schemes. I believe that we shouldn't be too picky about the project as well as the location, because there must be something that you can learn from any sort of project. I understand that Norwich is really far; it's 1 hour and 50 minutes ride, but I don't regret my decision at all. I feel like I was able to gain a lot of transferable skills, from the Mitra. But I also suggest you to try to reach out to your potential supervisors as well as lab members, unless you're told not to, so that you might be able to acquire additional useful information, how that person thinks. You can kind of like feel um, how your potential supervisor would be like. If you're really concerned about, going somewhere outside of London, it's better to reach out to someone who's studying there, who resides there. Yeah, so who's based there. And also, I would really recommend you not to say irrelevant things in your interview. I usually regret myself talking something about my high school experience in the interview for Institute of Cancer Research summer scholarship. It is better for you to think strategically on how to promote yourself, like what is your commonalities with the lab that you're applying for. You should think about that strategically and try to promote yourself in the best way. And I would also suggest you to make sure to start things early enough, because you don't want to go through all of this depressing applications and stuff throughout your exam period in term 3, because your academic grades are very important as well. Yep. And also, finally, also for the plant biology lovers, there's another studentship. I don't know if it's studentship, but it's summer school called the John Ennis Center Summer School in Norwich. They're pretty famous for plant biology. So if you want to check it, please go check it. Yeah, that's basically it. Thank you.
Get the name right. What do you recommend for people that want to do an internship in the summer of the first year?
Well, I did do some internship in my first year, but it was like 3 days. I do not. Well, I would suggest you to spam email every single professor, as previous speakers have mentioned. But if you could not get any lab experience, you just go with it. Like, you shouldn't be disappointed too much, because I had no experience and I could get the scholarship. But like, what you can do is maybe you can kind of like take committee roles or like do volunteering. That is like maybe something that is more feasible, realistic for you, and then that can be put on your CV. Just do something very, that just do whatever you can. But even if you couldn't get any lab experience, don't be disappointed too much. Maybe maximum lab visit, lab placement for like 1 week or 2 weeks. But if you get it, like, you're so lucky. I couldn't get it, but then I still got the scholarship. So Our high school. Okay, I'll move on to the next question. Okay. So the key differences between London versus non-London lab experience is that I really love the facility in Norwich. Actually, I came back to UCL Cancer Institute, and I feel like everything is a little bit old, and we have serious spatial issues in London. I feel well. Yes, Norwich was pretty far, and then it was countryside. I had to travel a lot, but facility wise, I think it was really good. And if, especially if you're interested in microbiology, I would recommend you to go because they have excellent microbiology facilities there. Um, yeah, so mm, I think there are pros and cons in, both London and non-London labs, but um, maybe it's better for you to explore different institutes, not just limiting yourself in London, and try to like apply to somewhere where you have some sort of similarities um, with your interest. Which scholarship? Okay, so how? Okay. So high school grades don't really matter. I think I wasn't really like a bright student back in my high school in Japan. I could English, but I couldn't do anything else. My science grades were not good. I could only English. So I don't think high school or A level grades matter a lot, but it would be great if you have good grades. Your first year's grade matter if you're yes, but your first year grades should matter a lot. Yeah, I got a first in my first year, and there is always a section that tells you to put your grade. So you must have a good grade in your first year. So rather than looking for lab experience in year one, I would highly recommend you to put more focus on your academic studies and just try to get as high as score as possible. That's what I would recommend. How are you balancing your lab experience in London while also keeping up? Okay, so I go lab every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I talk this with my current supervisor, Callum, a lot, but yeah, I'm pretty much balancing it well. Um, I just plan things in advance, and then I just yeah. What does your schedule within the lab look like? Oh, so yeah, so I go there 3 times a week, and then maybe 3 to 4 hours, maximum 5 hours. And I also attend the lab meeting every Monday. So I'm in the lab pretty much all day, but then I don't have classes. So I just like share my schedule, my timetable with my supervisor and then try to coordinate things out. I think your supervisor would be happy to help you out about that. The professor you want to work with, if a potential supervisor already knows you, they're much more likely to take you on from the summer. Just start emailing them. Yeah, I agree, Josh. I agree, Josh. But then you should recommend people to come to Norwich, Josh. Yeah, but I just want to say Norwich is good. In terms of facility, it's amazing. Maybe it's a little bit inconvenient in terms of like transport and stuff, but I really loved the facilities there. Oh yeah, I have to mention Josh is doing a PhD in GIC in a plant biology institute right next to the QIB, and he helped me a lot throughout over the summer. He helped me a lot. Thank you, Josh. Yeah. So should I pass on to Kavya?
Yeah, of course. Okay, I'm gonna try my best to figure out how I present my PPT because I've never done this before. Is it all good or?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. Hi everyone. I'm Kavya. I did the Wellcome Trust Biomedical Vacation Scholarship this summer from mid-July to end of September. So it was a 6-week program, unlike a lot of other people's programs, which I understand were 8 weeks or maybe even longer. And the funding body was the Wellcome Trust. And yeah, let's just get into how I. Okay, so some background about me is that I am an international student from India, and the fact that I was an international student, I suppose, sometimes disqualified me from applying to certain schemes, and I also, in general, ended up applying to fewer schemes compared to a lot of the others, but it worked out, so that was good. So I have had a fair bit of experience before, but I really don't want that to throw you guys off and be like, oh, I need to have as much experience, because that really is not the case. Just to preface, there are so many schemes that are exclusive to people that don't have any research background. So if you do not have any experience, that's fine, as long as you're able to showcase that you have transferable skills from, like, maybe starting a club in your high school, or being part of a society at university, or any jobs that you've worked where you've had work experience and you can show that you've been a team player, time management, so on and so forth. And I will talk about that a bit in the end. But I did do a full-time unpaid internship during my gap year, which, yes, I took a gap year after high school, and it was at the National Institute of Epidemiology in India, and this was during COVID. So I was working with the microbiology part of the lab, but I did get to work in a very busy and very exciting time as well, where there were a lot of COVID samples that were the entire nation's COVID samples were technically being processed in the place I worked at. And I got to sort of just volunteer and help out here and there with, like, things that I was allowed to, because it was a very protective, sort of high security facility, the virology part of it. But I worked in the microbiology lab, and it was a wonderful experience because I never really considered working with the microbiology aspect of science in general. My interests, as you can see in the last point, are with regards to more molecular biology, cancer biology, gene regulation, and stuff like that. But it really broadened my field of vision, just to how there is so much, like, interdisciplinarity within science and within biology, obviously. So yeah, that was an internship that I did. I did it full time because it was during my gap year. It wasn't anything crazy. I think a lot of it was, like, I'd say 50% of it was shadowing, because it was such a big institute and you can't really have your own project. And I did do it for 4 months, I want to say. Yeah, 4 months. So half of it was me just shadowing the work that they were doing, but the other half of it was just me building molecular biology skills. So you don't need this sort of an internship. You can build your molecular biology skills in your lab. And that's sort of what I did in first year and second year. The labs that we have, whatever I practiced during my internship, I was just doing it again. So you can also show transferable skills through your lab work. And then I also did do a 1 month, it was a very, very relaxed and chill, just like a volunteer initiative that I did at the Institute of Healthy Aging, where I helped out a third year literature project student with some data collection and with some data analysis using ImageJ and Fiji. It is some experience. There wasn't too much that I was able to get from that experience, but I just sort of mentioned that in my application as well. And I'm an ex-committee member of the Genetics Society, and I was the president of the UCL Review last year. And I have had work experience with sort of picking up stints and doing bar back work, just waitressing, things like that. And I've also had experience with sort of a public speaking job, presenting seminars and stuff like that at during my time at university. And then at high school, the things that I did were also relevant to my application, where I told them that I was the head girl of my school. I was the cultural secretary of my school. So there was a lot of organizational stuff that I did back in school. There was a lot of liaising with different people, teamwork. There was a lot of setting things up, being creative with the way of planning things. So those were experiences that I thought was worth mentioning, and I sort of put that on my application as well. And I did and am currently also working on a literature review kind of project with Think Bloomsbury and the UCL Bioethics Society, where I'm working with a team and we're looking at the trajectory of gene therapies and all of the cell and gene therapy research that's happening at UCL. Now, I know all of this sometimes might sound like it's a lot, but it's all just tiny, tiny things that I've done as a little baby student. So I really don't want this to be overwhelming and throw you off if you don't have all of these things. And yeah, like I mentioned, my academic interests are specifically in epigenetics, gene therapies, and cancer biology. So yeah, these are the internships I applied to. I don't know why the font is so small, but these are the internships I applied to. I applied to the Institute of Cancer Research summer studentship. That was the first one I applied to. I don't know if I applied in time because I sent in my application at the drop of the deadline. So maybe I didn't even hear back from them because I didn't submit on time, but I think I applied. I also applied to the LMB student placement scheme, which is based in Cambridge in the MRC lab. And the final one that I applied to was the UCL Wellcome Trust Biomedical Vacation Scholarship. And I was lucky enough to get into the final internship that I applied to. But I did plan on applying to more internships. I think a big part of it was just that many of them did not appeal to my areas of interest. As I mentioned, I think epigenetics and gene regulation are very specific interests. And Ichika did mention before to not bother too much about the specific project that you're applying to, which I do think is very, very sound advice, but it was in my specific case because I already had experience before interning in a lab. I thought I had a bit more, I could ask for a bit more. And I was also not too worried about getting that's a lie, but I kept telling myself it's okay if I didn't get an internship that was in my exact field of interest, because I wasn't just doing it for the experience. I was genuinely doing it for exposure into my field because I already had the experience, if that makes sense. But in general, what Ichika said holds true. Do not put too much emphasis on the specifics of the project you're applying, as long as it appeals to your general sort of interests. Yeah, so these are pictures of me in my lab with all of the work that I did. I could not manage to get too many pictures, but basically there's some of my lab space, and all of the people that you see are people that I met at a conference at the very end of my project. So some of them are other Wellcome Trust scholars, and some of them were from another research scheme, and we all discussed our project, and it was a really fun networking experience also that you get at the end of the internship. And a lot of internships do have this, where you have the opportunity to network. And I worked with C. elegans. If you can see, there are some pictures of these tiny worms. That was my model organism. So my project was basically on the cell epigenetics of cell death, and I worked in Barbara Conrad's lab. And Barbara Conrad happened to be one of our lecturers. So in my application, I was able to, in my application, we are able to disclose sort of top 3 preferences for projects from the list of projects that we are given. And in my application, I tried to tailor my application towards the projects that I applied to, obviously, but I did have a clear appeal to epigenetics and some cell death work. And I did mention that these were concepts that I learned in a specific module, Cell 9 and Cell 7, and I really enjoyed the lectures delivered by this lecturer who was my project supervisor. So things like that, if you are able to incorporate that you have interacted with this supervisor in some capacity before into your application, and you can demonstrate that that's another motivating factor for why you're applying, that can also add a lot into persuading the committee to giving you the position. So that's something I mentioned. And I'm not gonna, again, I feel like a lot of you guys have done such amazing things. And compared to you guys, I don't even know how I'm going to word my project experience. So, and also, I just don't want to overwhelm everyone with the specifics of my project. But basically, I focused on this thing called replication coupled nucleosome assembly. And it is one process that happens during replication that controls the distribution of nucleosomes into the daughter cell from the parent cell, and how all of the epigenetic marks that are on these nucleosomes control cell fate and cell death outcomes in C. elegans. And C. elegans was a wonderful model because we know that programmed cell death has been very well mapped out in C. elegans. So it was really great for me to work with that model organism, because that's something it's easy to work with, but also a lot of people at UCL work with it, and to have the experience to work with that was great. But also to expose myself to cell death research, which is something I've not done previously, was also wonderful. But then I also got my little experience of working with epigenetics and that side of things that clearly appealed to me. So that was really nice. And there were loads of tiny hiccups with the project, which is something that I think everyone should expect with an internship. So initially, what was advertised on the Welcome Trust page was not what I ended up doing. I still did something very similar. I still did something epigenetics related, but we basically worked on a different gene. We used completely different approaches. It was a lot more challenging, but it was also a lot more enjoyable for me because I love things that are challenging me. And it was also nice because my supervisor was able to always have an open line of communication with me in terms of expectations, how we are crafting the project, and she really took my interest into consideration when they were deciding on the final project as well. So that was really nice. And I think the major thing was that, unfortunately, the PhD student that I ultimately ended up working under had to leave the country 2 weeks into my project. So everything, all of the techniques, everything that he had to teach me over the span of 6 weeks was taught to me within the first 2 weeks very quickly. And then the rest 4 weeks, I essentially had the opportunity to do complete independent research. And it was sort of up to me to make my own strain, or figure out troubleshooting the experiments, even designing the experiment. I had to come up with my own ideas, which I really, really enjoyed. And I understand that it's not an experience that a lot of students get. But initially, it was daunting to think I'm going to be doing research that's unsupervised. But I think the flip side of it, if you look at it in this way, is that you get such an enriching experience from it and you learn so much from it. But also, the other side of the coin was that we planned on doing two projects for me. Out of those two projects, I ended up taking on a third project that was the PhD students as well. And I was maintaining his project simultaneously, and doing all of this in 4 weeks meant that I couldn't complete all three projects in time. But that was fine, because in the end, whatever I still got out of the experience, I made my own strain. I learned how to troubleshoot experiments. These skills that I got were incredibly, incredibly enriching, but also really interesting for me, and left me feeling very satisfied at the end of it. And if you can see from, I don't know if I put that picture, but basically I worked with looking at the differentiation of the specific nerve inside the worm, this neuron like progenitor cell. And it was also challenging to look at this tiny microscope picture that you can see over there. And through that, you look into the lens, you find these moving worms, and you're trying to locate if there's one dot of GFP, or two dots of GFP, or three or four. And it's this tiny dot, and the worms are moving. And if they have a certain number of dots of GFP, you also have to pick the worms while they're moving from looking through the microscope and put it onto another plate. And things like this are like, it's not a big skill that they openly talk about, but even just doing something as small as that made me feel like, wow, I actually did that. And these are very small victories I think everyone will feel when you're doing the internship, but you don't, it's not necessarily something you like put on your LinkedIn resume, right? But I think at the end of the day, what's important is to remember that enjoying your internship is more important than having like 40 bullet points that you can produce at the end of it. Obviously, it's great to have some, and I think it's also a good idea to discuss what you want to gain out of the internship with your supervisor, either in the application, if they've given you the space for it, which Welcome Trust did, or just at the start of your project, being really vocal about these ideas, having an idea about what you want to do yourself can be a great starting point. And if you don't have an idea, talking to your supervisor and getting somewhere with this point about what you want to get out of your internship can be a very important thing. A lot of people put emphasis on getting the internship, which I understand can be a very daunting process. But while you're at the internship, what you do, how much you make out of it, all of the different things that science is going to throw at you, um, learning how you tackle that is just as important as getting the internship. And that brings me to a very important point, which is soft skills matter in the lab and when pitching yourself in these applications. Which is why I said that things like being part of committees at UCL or starting a club in your school or having a job that you've worked where you've learned some time management, some teamwork, some keeping yourself organized or event management or whatever it is, these are skills that can matter when you are in the lab, depending on the project that you are doing. And it's really important for you to remember to showcase these skills, and these experiences that gave you these skills, and not feel like, well, this seems really irrelevant to be talking about this waitressing job that I did in my application to an internship. Obviously, plays more emphasis on your academic experiences, your academic interests in the former part of your application, but including these other experiences can be just as important and beneficial to you to crafting your application. So yeah, I think that's all I really had to say. Oh, with regards to the academic merit, I think some internship schemes place more emphasis on it than others. With Welcome Trust, they did say getting into the scheme is going to be based off of academic merit and just showing that you've had some experience and some stuff to work with. But also, they did have this aspect of increasing accessibility for people from different backgrounds, for people with sort of different mental or physical disabilities and things like that. So if you think that that's something that has impacted your academics in any way, there's probably going to be a space for you to talk about that as well. And it's up to you whether you want to disclose that or not, but that's something that's there in some schemes. And at the end of the day, for me, I don't think they really asked me to produce a transcript, so I don't know where they got the academic merit part of the application from for me. Maybe because it was UCL and internal, they were able to get it. I'm not sure how that worked, but it worked out in the end for me. And I understand that it can be very daunting, but I just want to remind everyone that you're going to be fine. You're going to get an internship at the end of the day. And if you don't, it's fine. Go have fun. Go out in the summer. You're going to have loads of other opportunities that come at you. And just, yeah, you can make the most of anything that comes at you, hopefully. Yeah, so I'm going to stop presenting my presentation because I don't know how to navigate otherwise.
Thank you very much for your presentation. The PowerPoint is looking really great, and your slides. I especially love the photos.
Oh, thank you. I tried.
Do you have a timeline for the applications you mentioned, like the Cambridge one on the slide?
Yeah. So I think the Institute of Cancer Research application did close the earliest. I remember it was 17th Feb because I was in the US, and the reason why I somewhat missed the deadline was because of time zone differences, and it was reading week. So that was the first one. With the MRC LMB one, I think that was mid-March, if I'm not wrong. And yeah, I think the MRC LMB one was roughly around when a lot of other internships are, which is the sort of March time frame. And the Welcome Trust one was actually the last internship, like I think in the internship season in general, that sort of advertised themselves and also opened the applications. That was in May, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, and end of May, I think end of April, end of May, there were still other schemes and opportunities that were open. So if you haven't found something out already by March, don't stress about it.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor?
So, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh yeah. So basically, Kavian and I got the same scholarship, right? It's the Welcome Trust one, and the Welcome Trust one is like offered at university base, how I should say. So basically, like each university had some spots for that specific scholarship, and we're basically under the same scholarship, but then we're doing things at different location. And I believe that, like, I remember that UCL opened its application really late, like in April. But then for the Norwich one, by the time it opened, I already got the offer. So yeah, there's a there's a difference in the application period that you should check out.
Yeah, and I think with another thing with the Welcome Trust scheme in general that I wanted to mention now that Ichika has brought it up is that there are the Welcome Trust BVS Biomedical Vocation Scholarship Scheme is something that is hosted at loads of universities, both in London and outside of London and the UK in general. But you have to apply to this university specifically, so you can't. There's not like one portal, and then you don't just apply to like the whole thing. So you can apply to both UCL and Norwich and King's if you want to go to King's.
It's everywhere actually. King's, Nottingham, Edinburgh, every single university.
Yeah,
almost.
But some universities have this sort of criteria that you should either
they do.
that university student, or you should be like a resident in that city or something like that. So just
or like it has to be from that uni, I think. For Edinburgh, I think I couldn't apply because of that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so make sure you always check the eligibility aspect. Even if you're like a home student, I would just recommend that you do it. Because I was international, I always had to check that anyway. But yeah, even if you're a home student, I would definitely recommend you make sure you're eligible. I wanted to really, really apply for the Institute of Child Health summer internship that was hosted by Gosh, because I was basically interviewing I was basically interviewing people from there, and I'm interested in gene therapies. But they did say that you should not have any prior experience, including shadowing work, which I already had. So that was single-handedly the reason why I couldn't get in. But schemes like that are really great for students that have no experience. So if that makes you feel more at ease, you have internships for everyone.
Is there a website where I can find research works professors are currently doing?
So I would recommend IRIS UCL is the best place to sort of do your research on what other professors are researching on. UCL's thing is IRIS. I think a lot of other universities have their own sort of website. It could be IRIS. I'm not sure if it's specific to UCL, but they will have this like one sort of website. With UCL, I really like the IRIS feature because you can type a keyword, and if that keyword is there in that professor's just profile in general, their profile is going to show up. So that's one way you can find researchers. Otherwise, I would say a great point would just be to start looking at the research of your lecturers because you have a more personal link. So when you're applying to their labs, you can also say, hey, I listened to your research, or I looked into your work after being in your lectures, and I found your lectures really interesting, and that motivated me to want to work with you. And that gives you just that bit more of a je ne sais quoi for you to like apply to the internship. yeah, what else? I think the Oxford University has like this list of, this is not for researchers, but this is for internships in general. Oxford University has this list of summer internships that they advertise in general, not just to Oxford, just in general. And I actually came across the Wellcome Trust opportunity through that website. So if it helps you to look at that one as well. And there's this really good other one, Lister Institute, where you have these list of fellows, and you have like a list of fellows in the website, and the Lister Institute summer scheme basically funds your research as long as you're able to contact any one of those fellows and convince them to take you in as their fellow, as their scholar. That's a really good one, and because they have a list in their website already, I guess that's another place to know about their research as well. Yeah, that's all I can think of at the moment. Is there any other question? Where could we find more information about the scholarships provided for overseas students? I don't know if there is a place where they advertise internships for overseas students specifically. I just think your best bet would be to look at internship opportunities in general and check each of those internships' eligibility criteria and see if it is open for overseas students or if you have to be a UK national citizen or something like that. But I don't know any place.